First of all, that all the venerables and distinguished persons who have joined this talk. The talk begin with the idea that I have been more than 10, 12 times to Sri Lanka, and so it's considered I just second home. So um, actually, this a kind of emotive bond with the people of Sri Lanka and the all eminent personalities and academicians of Sri Lanka. Definitely, the talk begins that I'm extremely just extending my heartful thanks to Professor Anura Manatunga, just who's a great well-wisher of mine and who just invited me for this talk. And also just thanking you that Dr. Jivanti Vasna and Renu Darshini, that who is extending all help from last 2-3 days, that how I have to just present this this talk, because you know that I'm technically not very just proficient. So my research scholar and as well as that both of them has helped me that how I should share the screen and all this. My presentation is that as you have seen the title, that Giriyaka Buddhist monastic complex, Rajgiri, and that is Antiquarian remains and physical spaces. When you just talk about that Giriyaka Hilltop Buddhist monastic complex, so you just come to this map, you just find it that Giriyaka is totally on a different side from Rajgiri in the outer skirt, and it is in not a core core zone of the Buddhism that started taking shape since the inception of Buddhism, as soon as the Buddha got Nibbana. Because the Rajgir's importance, Rajgir was the capital of Magad, and you say that Rajgir's importance was that Bimbasar, as soon as the Buddha attained Nibbana, that he was invited to Rajgiri, and then by the Bimbasar, and then you say that long process started coming and development of Buddhism took place. So you see it, you find it in the Rajgiri itself. The core area of Buddhism that is developed is right from the Jaitian village, that is the part of Rajgiri, and from, you can say, the 5 hills that you call that modern Rajgiri town. So you just find it that this is the core area, but Giriyaka monastic hill was totally off. And it is not from the Gaya side; it is totally in the Nawada side. It's totally just off from the main concentrated area that belongs to the Buddhism. Why this is important? Because you will find it, though this site was not well excavated, or you can say located. I was the first to just examine the different heads of Buddhism here. But it needs major study, measures, just you can say, just focus that, because its dimensions, its characteristics are far changing, that can, you can say, reshape the history of Magad as well as the Buddhism. So you see that you found it that when you talk about that early identification of just Giriyaka Hill. So you find it that since that 19th century, means in 1872 onwards, the identification of this site started by A.M. Broadley, then Buchanan, then Malcolm Quito, and then Alexander Cunningham. And then after that, almost you can say this site was not only just peripheral idea was just devised about this site. So when I just came into Nalanda and then I visited the site twice and thrice, I just found it that it is, this site can be very important. And then I started examining the site, that how this site can be historically prominent, historically famous, and what is its historicity, what is its, you see that its beginning of this site as a Buddhism, and how this site got matured, and probably how this site was declined and abandoned. So this is the very important, you can say, that idea when I just took to it, and just try to examine the site. I found that at least a dozen of new threads that I just find, and it needs further study, that how you can just relocate and connect the history of Buddhism to from other sites to this site. So when just it is, this site is, you know, that hilltop, it is almost hill on hill, and it is, you have to climb at least 3 to 4 kilometers when you reach on these Buddhist sites. So the very first thing is that how this you can say site can be well connected, and when this site was developed, when this idea was developed. So if you see this photo, this is the pathway, and you see that this is one of the stupa, that is just, you are looking only the upper portion, and this is the pathway it is coming. It is approximately 3-4 kilometers that connect this site from bottom. Some of the flights of steps are also there from the bottom, and then it directly connect to the stupa site. So this is the very important, the first ideas. And when you look and examine this pathway, it is almost 5 to 6 feet wide, and you find this, that stone pebbles, stone that is used is the same stone that was used into the Giriyaka, what you say, that wall, that you say, that cyclopean wall or architecture that was developed during the age of Bimbisara and Ajatashatru. So you don't need any, you can say, that identification, that how you will just try to find this basically, that what is the period of this this causeway, this path. So on basis of the material use, you find it that basically when this site was developed first time, it was just this path was developed. And what I just find it, that probably it was late 6th century BC, or you can say that early 5th century BCE, this pathway was developed, and it was none other than Ajatashatru, son of Bimbisara. Why I'm putting this hypothesis, just I will just tell you that why it is done. So when you just look into this pathway, it has it gives you number of idea, it gives you number of things that you look into pathway. When you go from there, you find it that this pathway is crossing almost the cyclopean wall or protected wall that is just going across it. So the question is, in 6th century BC, how this monastic pathway can just trespass, in fact, the wall that was created by state to defend the capital. So I found it that some small bastion-like structure, some square structure that is scattered. So it shows that there was some kind of authority was present, maybe some soldiers who was protecting the wall, and probably their permission was sought to facilitate the movement between the monastery and the village area that is just below, just on the bottom of the hill. So because the monk is to come for the water, potable water, monk is to come for the alms round. So basically this is the very important thing, that is that almost there is one thing that I found it, that there must be some kind of presence of authority, which is state authority, not in the monastic area, but that is peripherally of the monastery, and they have allowed the monastic people to make to just develop the road that is crossing their walls. So this is a very important thing, and it can only happen with the when king is supporting you, when authority is supporting you, because the king is living just, you can say 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers away from this place. So it is said that it was the person who, Ajatashatru, who was just instrumental for development of this site. This is my very important identification. That is a particular cave that I'm discussing. But before coming to the cave, when you talk about this hill, a whole hill, you find it that this Giriyaka Hill, you find it that this hilltop, when you examine the whole monastic complex of this hill, and you compare the other hilltop monasteries of the surroundings of the other area, you found it that this monastic complex is the earliest in the Magadha region. They developed around 6th century, late 6th century BC or early 5th century BC. So the very fascinating aspect of this is that it is first known hilltop monastery of the Magadha region. So its historicity is very much, you can say, clear that around this, you can say, even you found it that the monastic development itself was not properly developed. If you accept that Barabar and Nagarjuni as a monastic site, then its development is approximately 200 years after this site. Because what I found it that this site was developed around 5th century BCE, and you know it's that Barabar and Nagarjuni cave structure itself is developed into the developed around, you can say, that 3rd century BCE. And when you talk about the Gijjakuta, so you also just found that Gijjakuta as a monastic site was not developed during the Ajatashatru period. When you look into the archaeological findings of the Gijjakuta, which is very parallel to this site, you found is that probably 2 important cave sites of this area. One is the Gijjakuta, and other is that Suttaparni and what you say that Asura and Cave Samu, where Mahakashyap lived. Both have some kind of cave structures up to the Ashokan period, and you find it belongs to Aranya tradition. Here, monastic tradition itself was not well developed properly. Monasteries are found, but it is supposed to be very late risen. The earliest evidence goes to either Kushana or Gupta period of this region. So I have a very important just idea that that this area, basically the Giriyaka area, is supposed to be the first hilltop monastery in the clear term. Now let's come to the cave. And you see the caves, just giving you that this is the entrance of the cave, and this is not a natural cave. This is a man-made cave, and it is on the very steep, you can say, steep hill. So that is why archaeologists did not properly locate this site, and because of that, probably it was not properly identified. And I can say that I am the first one who has identified that what is its structure. So you see that it is man-made. Why? Because the steps are there, around 10 or 11 steps are there. Then it is a hall, and in the hall, this hall, there is a very small cave, and that a small cave is properly for the meditation. And just you go to outside this steps, you find there is another small cave. So what is the purpose that what is my explanation about this? And then very first thing that I found that if this is a cave, definitely it was a center of the shamanic religion. So it is a shamanic religion. It never means only the Buddhism. It has the Rajgiri and Nalanda has a very strong center of the Jains as well as the Ajivaks. So the first question was just raised that to whom this cave belonged. And this particular, the second plate just gives the answer. We find that just on the entrance of the cave here, there is a one Dharma Chakra is engraved. So when Dharma Chakra is engraved, there is no issue that it is belong to other. This cave belong to Buddhist. And so it is a Buddhist cave. Then the question is that how this how you relate this cave particularly. So for it, just I just got to learn the structure, and very fascinating structure. That is the description of not this cave, but this structure you find into the Pali Suttas. What is that? Some of the suttas mentions that that Devadatta replicate copied the lifestyle of Buddha. Means he almost copied the same monk, same kind of living tradition. So if you see the tradition of the Gijjaput or other cave, actually it is said that there was a main cave structure where Buddha used to live or meditate, and just surrounding it that there is adjoining cave always. In the Gijjaput also you will find it that one is known as Buddha's cave, other cave is Ananda cave. So it is said that Ananda just used to sit in the other adjoining caves, and basically for the protection or for all. So if you see it, this structure, it is the cave, this is the main hall, and just outside this there is a small cave. Probably some of the disciple of the person who was living here was sit here, and it has a separate place for meditation. So that gives me idea that probably this cave belonged to you can say that to Devadatta. Why? He was sitting in the main hall. He was a Dhutanga practitioner, so rigorous asceticism. So he needed some special space for his meditation just within this main cave, and outside, because he was replicating the model of the Buddha. So his disciple was sitting outside in the small cave that was engraved. So on basis of it, basically, I just proposed the idea that probably this cave belonged to Devadatta. And why I'm just saying that Xuanzang mentions another very important point when you just discuss, he was discussing about the Devadatta and all. So he says that they were Dhutangas, basically. They follow very rigorous practices. And he mentions some of his followers, these Devadatta's follower, that they were performing asceticism so rigorously that they oozed blood. And because of oozing of the blood, where they are performing their practices, the stone became red. So the blood clot was, he found that there was some blood clotting on rock. So this is very strange thing, that if in the 6th century that he was just mentioning about that rock has some impression of red spot. And another important sense says that where Devadatta live is that it is made from the black rock. So two very, you can say that very important questions that when you go as to survey the area, and then very perplexing question does come that how you can discover the red spot, and then how you can just identify the color of the rock. And you find the amazing fact, as soon as I just reach this site, whole Giriyak is from the red stone. Only this area, this is, you can say, around 300-400 inches from black rock. It's dark black. And then again, the question was that how you identify that there is some red spot. And very fascinating discovery. I've sent a link of this paper on my slide in the last slide. You'll find it. I have just given you a photograph. So you find it on this wall. There was a lot of red vermilion actually mark. Probably this cave was later occupied by some tantric practitioners. So they have done this kind of puja and have a very, you can say good impression of, you can say, vermilion or red marks. So whole rock is supposed to be red. So I got this red spot. Probably this red vermilion mark was Xuanshang confused with this red vermilion mark, and he just considered it was a blood spot basically. But it was not a blood spot basically, it is a vermilion mark that was added. This impression was probably added later on by some Dhutanga practitioners, probably in the early centuries of the Christian era, or you can say the late centuries, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th century, in the early medieval age, you can just say. But when he was just coming, he found this kind of spot, and so he just mixed the idea that Dhutangas have oozing the blood and their impression is on that. So personally, I am just identifying that this is a very important thing, that this cave belonged to Rajgiri. All the textual tradition mentions that in his last phase, that Devdutt lived in Rajgiri. Here he lived, and he cannot live in the main core area that is in the Gajjakuta Suttaparni circle, because it was all dominated by Mahakashyaps and their followers. So this is the very important things that that idea that was developed. Another point, just I want to just associate with tradition that I come just later on, and what then I will just discuss it. That it was not only him. This probably site was occupied by another prominent monk. Second very important hypothesis that was put forward by Cunningham, and that was that he identified in this cave, the cave that was just not this cave, there was another cave adjacent to it. In the other side, he identified that that other cave was in the Sal Guha, where you can say that Buddha in the Sakka or Indra asked 42 questions to Buddha, and Buddha answers in the Sakkapanya Sutta. So it is said that just opposite to this cave and another side of the hill, there is a cave, and that cave just Cunningham identified that it is in the Sal cave, Guha, or in the Sal cave. When he found it, that cave is so steep, nobody can just travel on that. It was only the Dhutanga practitioners can just climb it. Very difficult for us, even that, and you were fearing for your life that when you are just reaching on that point, because somehow you reach on that cave, but it is very difficult that how you come down. Very difficult. It is same for that cave also. You have somehow reached that from that, but it is very difficult that how you will come down. So very steep, you can say, that structure that is you find it. So very important idea that how, if it is not the just in the Sal Guha, then what would be the structure? So I just take the support of the Pali tradition and the textual tradition, and I found that Parvati Guha was not so steep, and it is surrounded by a village of the Brahmins, basically, where Buddha used to go. So I just visited at least 5-10 kilometers from this place, and that place is very beautiful, and and it is Xuanzang mentions that two hills are there where Parvati Guha is there, where Parvati Hill is there, and one is very little bit steep, not very steep, where Parvati Guha is there, and other is somehow flat. So when we reach this area, we found it the same, that there are two hills, one is flat, other is slightly steep, and on just edge of that slightly steep hill, one cave that have some kind, it's supposed to be natural, but later on some modification has been done, and it is habitable. Anybody can just, it's not, you can say that like it's on a steep height, like the other caves, other two caves are there. So this cave is supposed to be, you can say, what I find is that what Cunningham was identified that in the Sur Guha is the cave near Giriyaka Hill. No, the Parvati Guha, in my hypothesis, is supposed to be the Indusal Guha. And as per the description of not only the Fahian, Xuanzang, but also that broadly also contested is, though he has not identified Parvati Guha as Indusal Guha, but he contested the idea of, you can say, of the Cunningham that Indusal Guha is near Giriyak. So very important finding was there. So many, but very rich findings we found when just I was looking to the Giryaks. So that is that hypothesis that I have given is that it has basically that two hills that was mentioned by Chinese travelers, both Chinese travelers. Number two is one is the flat hill that mentions by Chinese traveler. The third, that is most important, its cave is more approachable to live and meditate. So Buddha can go easily, and it is not like a steep cave like that Gidavar cave or the cave that is near the Giriyak, on the other side of Giriyak. So my hypothesis is this Parvati can be the Indusal Guha, where Buddha just answered to Sakka or Indra and preached Sakkapanya Sutta. So this is a very contested issue in the history of the Giriyak and Rajgir. Just I'm finding that I'm just giving to you. Next, when you come to the stupas, again, very fascinating stupas, evidences. The very first, when you come to this place, just see it. This site is still not excavated. Only trench were done by the early archaeologists, including Cunningham, then Broadley, and then later archaeologists after the independence, but it was not excavated till date. When trench was made, it was found that this site, this height has two stupas, basically. This mound contained the two stupas. So a very fascinating, what you say, that idea that you got it. So very first thing, why maybe accidentally there was two stupas there, but you will find it, this tradition got continued. In the latter tradition, you find it again when the stupa was made, side by side, again the two stupas were built. This one and this one. You find this is finally broken and looted. You find it was like that, the smaller one. So you find it again, there was two stupas. So it was a very perplexing question that why two stupas there. So first I'm coming about that stupa. Again, this stupa is supported by a huge parapet wall. You see this wall. It is around 100 feet in length, around 100 feet and around 40 to 50 feet height. You see that stone that is used. So the very important that these stupas belong to whom? That in very earliest phase of the Buddhist history, so much labor was just ensued and done to protect this stupa. This wall is still supposed to be the amazing. How can a state so much of money and labor to make this wall? Very amazing. It's a huge wall protecting this stupa because it is on the slopy hill. So it's a chance of land soil erosion. So basically this wall is protecting. Again, the question is that who made it? And it is not only this stupa. There is, I'm just coming on the, when I just deal with the last point, this stupa is also supported by large water reservoir. This picture, you see that, large water reservoir. So the question is that why this structure became so important? It is protected by very, very highly protective wall, just having the two stupa, just supporting by a causeway where there is a water reservoir. So the very first thing is that who made it, who built it. So historically, it is very important that Bimbisara did not build any Buddhist structure. He just donated his Venuvana and it was his personal garden, but probably he did. It was his son, Ajatashatru, who did very, very massive work and very aggressively. He took the relic of Buddha and just founded a stupa. It is said that he founded the stupa for Rahula. It is said that he just built the stupa for Devadatta. It is said that he built the stupa of Ananda. He went personally to Vaishali and just divided the relic, half relic he gave to the Vaishali Vajjayans and half he took. So he did commendable work. And if you see that stone structure, historically only two rulers, one is Bimbisar, other is Ajatashatru, who used stone in the Rajgiri. After it, there is no political connection of the Rajgiri. After Ajatashatru, the capital was shifted to Pataliputra. So historically only two rulers did. So Bimbisar did not build it. So who built it? It is historically very clear that it was you can say that Ajatashatru who made this structure. So the question was again that for whom and why two? So again, just I went to the textual tradition. Definitely Devadatta was his master and he never discarded Devadatta. And if I just propose that Devadatta is living in the cave that is just on tip of the Giriyak, definitely one of the stupa belonged to, it's my proposition, only this excavation, and if luckily we found some inscription, we will have some idea that who is just these two stupa belong to whom. So the very first stupa, what I find is probably belong to Devadatta. It is hypothetical, but probably my hypothesis is true when I just correlate the cave structure with this stupa. Then the question is that, what is the second? Who is the second? Again, you will find it that you have to go to the textual traditions of that is, and the happening that was the incident that happened during the first Buddhist council, and that was basically a kind of a spat, a kind of differences that developed between two great teachers of Buddhism, Mahakashyap and Ananda. You know it, that's just during the cremation and right from after the funeral pyre, up to the first council, Ananda was just, you can say rained with hundred of the questions. You did this, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. Definitely that Ananda just regarded Mahakashyap like anything. He worshipped Mahakashyap like that. But probably after his arahatship and his huge popularity, especially among the nuns, textual traditions mentions that his followers did not like the attitude of the Mahakashyap. So every time, even on many instances that Mahakashyap told Anand, boy. So he was also a evolved monk. If you tell him that boy, that how it is going to help. So it is said that what presumption I seek that because of this spat basically, and Ananda lived 120 years of age, just. And almost he spent every minute in the Rajgiri. So my hypothesis is that he cannot live in the Gijjakuta and what you say that Suttaparni Asura cave complex. But it was the monopoly of the Mahakashyap. Definitely, he was, I just personally say that he was Jamindar, he was a king of that area, you can say. When you go from the other side, it was, these hills was, the opposite side hills was totally dominated by the Jains. All, it was the land, it was the hills for the Mahavira and then his disciples, Sudharman and all. So you can see it on 5 hills, you will find it that majority, if you are Buddhist, dominated by the Mahakashyap, and if you see that on the opposite side, it was dominated by that the Jains. So the question is that if Anand decide where he was to go, so probably after death of Devadatta, probably that particular site was almost abandoned, Giriyak site. So my presumption is that probably Ananda shifted to next corner of Rajgiri. Why I'm saying this? Because that site was very beautiful site and very accessible to the villages where Buddha and Ananda very frequently used to visit, like Vedika village, Brahman village. Buddha and Ananda just visited many times to that village. So this Giriyak site was much accessible to the villages from where he can directly get or access for the Alps, because that area, when you say that Giriyak area was almost a very what you say that dedicated to, very loyal to Ananda and Buddha. Definitely it was all area loyal to the Buddha, but specification you will see that it was very loyal to Ananda. So in my opinion, that probably Ananda shifted after death of Devadatta to this place, and probably the second stupa that was just made may belong to Ananda. I'm not saying it may belong to Ananda. And that's why it became a custom in the Giriyak Hills. When new stupa structure was developed, you find it that almost 2 stupas were built simultaneously. So you'll find it one stupa, one is a smaller stupa. So traditionally, it is said that it is here King Jarasandha of Puranic king probably used to come here and sit. So Baitak means that his garden. So it is said that it is Jarasandh's garden. So because of that, this stupa is known as Jarasandh ki Baitak. Baitak means where he used to sit for in his leisure time. So that stupa itself now identified is that Jarasandh stupa or Jarasandh's Baitak stupa. So very fascinating structure. Again, when you look to the smaller stupas, you find it that it was not only site for these larger structure of the stupas. At least you have 10 or 12 identifications in which you find that there is very smaller stupas, two stupas. This stupa that is from right side on the slide is identified by the Cunningham, and he said that it is 12 feet that and stone base it has. So he just said that it's not only one, it has the many such stupa is there, and it is identified by the Cunningham, and he said this is the Mauryan origin. So definitely that Ashoka built this stupa. When you find this stupa, basically you will find it that it is basically the earthen stupa, and then it was covered with stone, and the same stone that was used in the parapet wall, on the water reservoir, and probably the stupa that is still under the earth, not excavated. So basically this stupa has more antiquity, and this is that earlier than this stupa. What I find it, this is a pre-Mauryan, and it may be some relic stupa just also. I cannot say because this is unidentified and just not excavated till date. So you said that multiple structure, and every site, whether you just go to this site, this structure, this is these stupas were as soon as you started climbing upward. So these multiple structure you find, and either you go to this site, either you go to this site, or either you go to this site. All these structures were well supported by monasteries. It has a number of monasteries, probably 1, 2, 3 monastic structure surrounding this letter. And this monastic structure, we found it. You will find a material that you mentioned. That you will find it that probably this site, this stupa, this monastic structure continued up to the 10th, 11th century. The latest structure that may belong to the Pala period. So this is one of the very important idea that just gives it, that every site here, or you can say here, every the stupa structure is well supported by some kind of monasteries. And here you find that monastery that probably started in the 5th century BCE, continued up to the 10th or 11th century at this site. So this again very important factor that you just find. Again, when I just come to the last point, that you will find is that water reservoir, that is, you find it, this is the wall. This water reservoir is just connected from 2 sides directly to hill. And on 2 sides, it was a artificial wall was created. And it, you can say that leakage was just protected by putting some kind of bitumen or some rock and all. So what is this purpose of this? Basically, the purpose of this water reservoir is to collect the rainwater. So you can say that rainwater harvesting's first example in Magadh, you will find it. It is the earliest example of rainwater harvesting in the whole Magadh region. Amazing. And probably this kind of water reservoir, I'm not knowing the other part, maybe one of the first after the Dhaulavira, that is from the Indus Valley civilization. So very fascinating. This structure belonged to 5th century Common Era. And in the Gangetic and Magadh plain, we don't have such kind of arrangement. This is the only one. Very fascinating structure that just you found it. Definitely the water of this was not used. Cunningham says that basically it was for this domestication of iron, for you can say the purpose of the swans, that Hansa used to come here and live here, because this monastery probably belonged to the Mahayana, and once a monk who was very hungry just saw that I don't have food. If one Hansas were just flying over this monastery, so it is said that if I get one, so I can just feed my stomach. So Hansa just listened it, and he killed himself and just got. So then monk became very repetitive, and then finally he just worshipped him. And in the memory of that Hansa Vihara or Hansa Sangama Rama was built. This was the hypothesis that was developed. But again, you just find it that this is not a area where that Hansa can be just there, and because it is almost, there is no water, and there is Hansa Vihar has a separate identification that is near Apsar. A new finding was made. So it was not for the purpose of the Hansa, but it was for the purpose of harvesting of the rainwater. And that rainwater was probably used by the monks who are living here for domestic purpose, day-to-day purpose, not for drinking. Because if you see it, found it that if you look into that wall, when you just go to the bottom of this area, you find there is a specific tank here on the bottom. And probably this is a natural tank, not man-made. It may be man-made. So here you just found it. Probably from here, monks come and use the water for the drinking from this. But water of this, you see it, this structure was used for the domestic purpose, day-to-day purpose, for cleaning, for taking bath and all, but not for that. So on basis of identification, you find it, except the pillars, till date, no Buddhist image has been found from this site. Very strange. Not a single Buddhist image has been found. So almost you can say that the finding clearly indicates that it was almost a Theravada site. What's the Cunningham idea is that it was a Mahayana site? Definitely not. No idea of ritual, no idea of, you can say that only few seals are found that I have not discussed in this paper. It is in this slide, it has been just given in my paper. So almost it is said that it directly orients towards that it is a completely Theravada site. And they just made it specifically with the Aranya tradition or a totally meditative tradition. And that's why maybe some of the stucco figures that was of the Buddha was embedded into the stupas and all. But as a image worship, image cult was probably not developed. Maybe in the stupas that was under the earth, but it was not popular because you don't found only some stucco images in the stupas, and you will find just one seal or on the pillars, some images are there. So image cult, you can say, that is hugely popular in the whole Magadha region after the Kushanas, or you say that after the Common Era. So it was not found here. So it gives impression that it was totally a Theravada site. And initially developed on the Dhutanga practices and later on the practices of the Ananda. And what I again just given my hypothesis that probably it was the place from the Sarvastivad was the idea of Sarvastivad took the birth, because it is mentioned that from the Rajgiri itself, why I found that basically from the Suttaparni and other areas, Kashyapiyas basically that Mahakashyap tradition developed. And when Purana challenged the hypothesis or some of the some of the ideas that was incorporated by Mahakashyap, though he did not condemn it, but he go and he said it is just near to the Suttaparni, 10 kilometers away from that. Their followers developed another school, maybe the Mahishasaka, and from this place basically that Ananda's follower developed the idea of Sarvastivadins. So it is say that this place is also important. What I found that probably the follower of Ananda developed the idea of Sarvastivadin from this place only. So this is a very fascinating story of the Giriyaka, though what findings I got is simply based on some of my exploration. It needs proper excavation, and definitely what I believe that when excavation will be done to this site, it would be far-reaching. The finding would be far-reaching, and it may reshape, you can say, the history of Buddhism in not only in Magadha region, but in the context of the whole India. Very fascinating structure, this. So I have deliberated many things so far in the PPT. Just I have mentioned my paper, and that is open access, so anybody can just download it free and just read it and just put the, if any idea, further even any suggestions and that. So thank you again, Professor Andra Manatunga and his team to giving me opportunity, and I'm just